swapping the documents. I was too scared to speak up at the time, but I've managed to get them back. Although it might be too late, this is an important document that you worked hard on, right?
One of my colleagues named Brenda said with a smile, lowering her eyebrows. The documents inside the envelope she handed over were indeed supposed to be taken to the client. I couldn't believe that the actions I thought were for the best at that time would come back to me like this. Yet, the undeniable fact is that I'm being secretly talked about and harassed. Now, Brenda is the only one who earnestly supports me, the unpopular guy. If she were to leave, my heart might truly break. As I tried to express my feelings to her while holding back my eagerness, I heard footsteps approaching. I am Alan Williams. I work as a salesperson at a trading company. Since my days as a new employee, I've diligently worked hard, and only recently have the fruits of my efforts begun to show. Unless absolutely necessary, I've always pushed through negotiations with any client. Thanks to that, I seem to have naturally acquired communication skills for dealing with various types of people. Just the other day, I succeeded in securing a major contract with a large corporation that my colleagues had been repeatedly failing with. When I returned with the contract, they rushed over and celebrated as if it were their own victory. Since then, I've been treated as the hope of the sales department. Though it's been tough with an increase in clients and more colleagues asking for advice, I've finally started to enjoy my work. One day, the annual sales department barbecue party was announced. It's a summer tradition, intended to let everyone relax and unwind from the usual stresses. Participation was open to anyone interested, and having no other plans, I decided to join this year too. This time, since the usual beachside barbecue spot was fully booked, it was going to be held by a river for the first time. Excited by the fresh, different atmosphere from the sea, I started preparing for the barbecue. The new employees intendedly helped out, but being more experienced, we led the preparations while teaching them. When the grill was finally set up and the charcoal started burning nicely, the other colleagues brought over the meat and vegetables they had prepared. Brenda handed me a tray of ingredients by the grill at first. With her charming looks and amiability, she had been capturing the hearts of male employees since she had come in. I was no exception, and I couldn't refuse whenever she asked for help with work. Since we didn't have a personal relationship outside of work, I was honestly surprised she spoke to me that way.
I cut these vegetables. Bigger pieces are more satisfying to eat, right? I've been watching from a distance. You were teaching how to set up the grill, weren't you? Guys who can do that kind of stuff are so cool.
Hearing such words with a bright smile made me grin, even though I knew she was just making a small talk. To avoid showing an awkward face, I took the tray while looking down and placed it on the warm grill. As the delicious smell began to spread, the fun barbecue started. Nearby, the department head and section chiefs were laughing loudly while chugging beer. A bit further away, some were chatting and munching on meat. Looking towards the river, I saw the others splashing water and laughing together. I watched that scene while drinking a soda, tirelessly grilling vegetables and meat. Then, I noticed a figure out of the corner of my eye. Turning to look, it was unmistakably my direct boss, Janet. I sighed at her bad habit again. I left a colleague in charge of the fire and hurried after Janet's back. She was my mentor in charge of guiding me when I was a new employee. Even back then, she was quite competent at her job, and now she's leading the sales department as a chief. I've learned a lot about work from her and respect her as a boss, but after being together for a long time, I noticed she has a certain bad habit. It seems she was raised in a very sheltered way, unaware of many things that most people experience as children. According to the section chief, it was Janet's first time at a barbecue, and she had a hard time during the preparation, such as breaking a part of the grill and getting the ingredients burned. Moreover, She hadn't been to the sea much either, and once she swam out too far without anyone noticing, nearly causing a big commotion when she almost went missing. Even outside of events, her naivety in everyday life often backfires. As someone who sometimes accompanies her on sales visits, I've gotten used to her eccentric behavior. Therefore, I no longer get panic when I'm beside her, facing something unknown with her eyes sparkling with curiosity. However, it can be dangerous when she acts on her curiosity. As I approached her moving further upstream, and called out to her, she turned around abruptly.
Oh, it's you, Alan. What's up?
That's my line, Janet. Where are you going? The current gets stronger upstream, and it's easy to get swept away if you're not used to it.
Okay. This is my first time playing in a river. So, I wanted to see where it starts, but I guess that's not possible.
Seeing her pout in genuine disappointment, I couldn't help but smile. Just as she started to head back, I noticed her footing and hurriedly shouted a warning, but it was too late. As judging the water to not be too deep, she stepped in and immediately sank. In places where the river flow temporarily slows, the riverbed can be unexpectedly eroded and deeper. Besides, unlike pools, drowning in the sea or a river is different. Both the person drowning and the rescuer can be toyed with by the current, delaying the rescue. I moved towards where Janet had sunk, but the strong current made it hard to get close. Still, I managed to find her and felt something that seemed like a struggling hand. Clenching my teeth, I used it as a grip to pull her up, but she was limp and having passed out. Carrying her body on my back to the riverbank, I immediately checked her breathing without a moment's rest. Deciding she wasn't breathing, I knew what I had to do next. I called for help as loudly as I could and started life-saving measures as soon as I saw a small figure. I wrung out my jacket and laid it on her chest, performing CPR by compressing her chest. Then, hesitating for a moment but deciding it was necessary, I also performed mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. The colleagues who gathered around turned pale, quickly realizing Janet had drowned and called for an ambulance. Some brought over a blanket, and others stood by for offering to take over if I got tired. Thanks to my reliable teammates, I could focus on the life-saving efforts. Finally, Janet coughed up water and slowly started breathing again. The moment I collapsed in relief, the paramedics arrived. Being the first responder, I accompanied her in the ambulance with borrowing a blanket. Seeing her weakly move her hand as she slightly opened her eyes, I instinctively took her hand. Then I smiled at her. It's okay now. There's nothing to be scared of. Not knowing what else to say, I just said that, and she smiled weakly before closing her eyes again. Later, Janet was admitted to the hospital for a day for observation, but thankfully, her life was not in danger. When I reported to the manager over the phone, I was told the cleanup was taken care of and that I could go straight home. Grateful for their concern, I staggered home from the hospital, took a quick shower, and collapsed into bed. The next day, I went to work as usual, but for some reason, my colleagues were acting distant. They would return my greetings but quickly looked away and hurried off. Just as I was wondering if something had happened after the incident, I was called by the manager. That's when I learned the shocking truth. Apparently, Janet was the CEO's daughter. She had kept quiet about it because she didn't want any unnecessary concern, but after overhearing the exchange with the CEO, it ended up being shared with the entire sales department. The CEO said he would have a thorough discussion with his daughter and then reach out again. The way it was phrased made me a bit scared, but since I hadn't done anything wrong, I simply replied with an understanding nod. The look in the manager's eyes seemed sharp, but nothing more was said. However, I soon came to understand the reason behind my colleagues' attitudes and the manager's piercing gaze. Somehow, rumors had started that I had done something inappropriate to Janet at the time. Yes, I had touched her chest for the life-saving measures and performed mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, but it was absurd to say that was indecent. Still, I thought it wrong to confront the whispering directly to correct them, so time just passed without me being able to do anything. Janet seemed to have recovered and returned to the office. If she noticed the rumor and corrected it, perhaps the current treatment I'm receiving might improve a bit. Holding on to that faint hope, I tried to greet Janet, but she avoided eye contact and walked away quickly. I attempted to speak to her several times when the timing seemed right, but she kept avoiding me. Shocked, I wondered if she had also come to dislike me, but suddenly, she approached me in the afternoon.
Alan, grab some juice and come to the break area. And get one for me too.
She said with avoiding eye contact, and then walked away. Seeing that as a chance to talk, I quickly bought the juice and headed to the break area. Handing over the juice to Janet, who started drinking without a word of thanks. I took a deep breath and was about to open up about the situation when she spoke first.
It was my first time. It might have been necessary, but it was still a shock. So, don't think a simple apology will make it okay.
She blurted out those words, finished her juice, and handed me the empty bottle before going back. I realized I was completely disliked, and stood there with stunned. From that point on, Janet began to ignore me completely. Even when we had to talk for work, she wouldn't make eye contact and only gave curt replies. Paradoxically, she would suddenly order me to get her favorite juice and snacks from the vending machine, fearing worse treatment if I refused. I complied, but never received any thanks, just an indifferent snatch of the items. Over time, the rumor that I had behaved inappropriately with Janet gained embellishments. Being the first responder was twisted into accusations of groping her before calling for help. Even starting mouth-to-mouth resuscitation was not out of necessity but a desire to kiss her. They were all baseless. Female employees looked at me as if I were filth, and male employees avoided me. Even the manager began to treat me coldly. In the midst of all that, only Brenda kept reaching out to me and often encouraging me.
Don't worry about those rumors. I believe you would never do such a thing.
Her support was the only thing keeping me going at work. It seemed Janet was aware of the rumors but hadn't corrected them. Possibly believing them since she had been unconscious at the time and couldn't deny what happened. Brenda kindly listened to my worries and encouraged me to forget about it with a smile. With her by my side, I felt I could overcome the ordeal. But then, one day, I experienced the terrifying nature of people anew. I had prepared documents for a new proposal to a client, but they were switched with something else. That happened despite my checking them right before leaving the office. My apology was met with harsh criticism from the notoriously difficult client. Under normal circumstances, I might have been able to brush it off, but with my heart already exhausted from baseless rumors, the criticism hit harder than it should have. Returning office with a sigh, no one even gave me a second look. Hoping to at least find the documents, I was searching through my desk drawers when Brenda approached me. When I asked what was wrong, she suggested we move to the break area for privacy. Once there, she hesitantly handed me an envelope, saying,
Actually, I saw a colleague who was close to you swapping the documents. I was too scared to speak up at the time, but I've managed to get them back. Although it might be too late, these are important documents that you worked hard on, right?
She smiled with lowering her eyebrows. The documents in the envelope were indeed meant for our client. I couldn't believe that my actions, meant well at the time in the river, would come back to me like this. Yet, the undeniable truth was the whispers and harassment I was facing. At that time, Brenda was the only one earnestly supporting me, the unpopular guy. If she were to leave, my heart might truly break. Just as I was about to share my feelings with her, I heard approaching footsteps.
Are you that good of an actor? Swapping those important documents and spreading such ridiculous rumors, all of it was you.
Janet said as she approached, her gaze cold enough to send shivers down my spine, directed at Brenda.
What are you talking about? I didn't do any of that.
Oh really? Then you're saying all of this is a lie?
Janet produced a voice recorder. It contained audio of her asking several employees where they heard the rumors. Each one answered they had heard them from Brenda. At that moment, Brenda's smile disappeared completely.
I asked around, maybe 20 people or so, and almost everyone in the sales department said they heard those rumors from you. About those documents, you do know our company has security guards, right? For their ease of work, we have surveillance cameras installed. Did you not notice? I think it's time to check those out. If you're innocent, you wouldn't mind coming along quietly, right?
Janet's tone was cornering, and Brenda gritted her teeth. Brenda was glaring at us before running off. As I vacantly watched her leave, Janet quietly approached. Our eyes met firmly for the first time in a while.
I'm sorry for being mean, and for taking so long to help. I was so caught up in sorting out my feelings, investigating took time.
I thought you hated me. You believed those rumors, didn't you?
How could I think badly of my lifesaver? How long do you think I've known you? I know you're not the kind of person to do such things.
She said with a gentle smile, making me so relieved that I couldn't hold back my tears. I later found out Brenda had tried to ingratiate herself with me after my significant achievement. Frustrated that a direct approach wasn't working, she resorted to this scheme. The thought that I almost confessed to her still sends shivers down my spine. As Janet did her digging, the spell seemed to lift from other employees, and those who had been close apologized for believing such rumors. Brenda found no place for herself at the company anymore, and resigned quickly. I could only hope she would change her ways in a new place. Eventually, as the manager mentioned, I was called in by the CEO. He was with Janet there, which made me even more nervous. As I anxiously awaited his words, he stood up and asked me to shake hands. I answered it in a hurry. He offered a calm smile.
Thank you for saving my daughter. I'm sorry I couldn't express my gratitude sooner. I never imagined her savior would be maligned like that. It was infuriating, but Janet insisted she would handle it. It seems she did well, right?
It turned out he had been informed of the truth by Janet and had believed in me. I was so tense I could hear my heartbeat, thinking I could have been fired for supposedly making a move on his daughter. Relieved, Janet approached and shared.
I still remember how you held my hand in the ambulance. Your palm warmed up, and it was very comforting. I haven't forgiven you for taking my first experience. But I think I'm okay with it being you. You can have my other firsts too.
Her face turning red as she held my hand, my face was blushing. As I unable to speak, the CEO laughed heartily.
Janet might be a bit naive, but I feel I can trust you with her. She is turning 30, and we were just starting to look for a partner for her. While we respect both of your decisions, shouldn't you take responsibility for taking her first love, Alan?
Janet heard his words and said aloud.
Don't say anything unnecessary.
It seemed the first love part was true. Happily squeezing her hand back, she blushed even more and smiled joyfully. Thus, I will be said to be swayed by the naive Janet more than ever before, but that's a story for the joyful future ahead.